Fingertips above the water, you watch me drown. You could have saved me, but you let me down, yeah.
Christian, I appreciate you being here.
I'm so glad to be here.
Well,
I love this studio. You have an absolutely beautiful studio.
Thank you.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
big into, I'm learning guitar.
All right.
Before we even get started,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
learning guitar, and I'm just enthralled by it. So I come in here and I see this is just a fantastic studio. I was meant to be here this morning.
And the fact that you came here means a lot to me. I was, as we talked a little bit off air, I was captivated by your TEDx talk, and then further research in the work you're doing. And I personally, for me, I think it's extremely important because personally, Christian, I think we're walking around, a lot of us are walking around angry.
Yeah.
I think it's destroying communication. We'll get into everything,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it's very important work. And that was captivating about the work you were doing in the prison system. That was just, so again, on the front of it here, thank you so much for being here.
Definitely.
Yeah, it means
Definitely.
a lot. I want to start the show off and just ask you a blunt question, because if there's anyone that's ever come into my life that could answer this question, it's probably you. What is the modern day answer to the question, what is anger?
I think it's such a great question because we don't stop and reflect. Like, what is it? I mean, the short technical answer is anger is an intense emotion that we experience, and it's a primary emotion that we experience. So that's our quick definition. Mm-hmm. But I think anger really stems from our desire to have things be a certain way.
Okay.
And the degree to which we desire something to be a certain way and then it's not. Like, if I think there could be a math problem about this. The math's not my area, but I'm telling you, the degree to which we believe something should happen against the degree to which it doesn't happen, that's how angry we get. So in other words, you're driving down the road and you think, he shouldn't cut me off. He cuts you off. How attached you are to him not cutting you off.
Are you driving me this morning? Possibly.
But how attached you are to not wanting that person to cut you off is the degree to which you will say,
yes.
Now think about this. So I drive down the road and I expect it. So I ride a motorcycle. One of the things you learn when you ride a motorcycle is ride like everybody's going to kill you. So you kind of have this expectation that person's not going to be paying attention.
So you're always on the defense.
You're always aware.
Okay.
In fact, the acronym is C: search, evaluate, execute.
Okay.
So you're constantly searching. You're constantly trying to evaluate what's going on and then execute it. So when it comes to this idea of expectations, like if you didn't expect that, if you thought, okay, he might cut me off. Now when he cuts me off, I'm ready for that. Mm-hmm. But if I say he shouldn't do it, nobody should cut me. Nobody should drive the way I don't want them to. And how attached you are, well, that's how the degree to how angry you'll be. Okay.
And it's funny how that driving creates a whole nother level of sensitivity, doesn't it? Or indignance, or whatever that emotion is, where we tend to snap quick when we're behind a wheel.
Two reasons. One, when we drive, we're in a car and we look at another car as an object. So we objectify the person in the car. We're not looking at this is another human being.
Right.
This is Sally, who is in a hurry to see her husband at the hospital, who she found out he had a heart attack.
Okay.
We don't think that. We think that red car, that asshole. We just objectify them. And so when we do that, when we objectify anyone, we give ourselves license to get angrier because it's an object. Oh, I throw this and break it. It's a bottle.
Got it.
And so that's one reason why. The other reason is this. In a car, anxiety and fear, neurologically, they look the same. And so when you're having a little bit of anxiety, or was this fear, I thought he was going to hurt me, your adrenaline and cortisol rush. And I'm going to show you today, we'll talk about how that link, because anger's right intertwined with that. Like I would rather be angry than anxious. Because think about anxious or fearful. It's like, oh no, I'm in a position of what I perceive myself to be in weakness. But when I lash out, rawr, I feel powerful. A, B, I release endorphins literally when I yell.
Okay.
And so obviously that can lead to things that you feel unhappy with and shame and all that stuff. But the point is, on the road, those are two real reasons why that happens. One is there's a little bit more on edge of fear that this person could hurt me.
Okay.
And then the other one is that's an object. That person, that's an asshole driving by. That's a human being who could have a myriad of issues for why they're driving the way they are.
Right. Let's take it back for a second, and we'll bring it up to modern day, but I want to get a little bit about your background. You are a Pittsburgh native, or a Southwestern PA native, is that right?
I am. This is my home. This area is my home. My parents, I have a brother and a sister, an older brother and an older sister. Grew up in Brownsville, Pennsylvania. So love the history of Brownsville. You know, Brownsville was going to be it really was going to be Pittsburgh before Pittsburgh occurred. There were 75 people trains running in and out of Brownsville in the late 30s, early 40s. So, but then all of a sudden, like when people started to gravitate toward Pittsburgh, it was a whole different ballgame. Matter of fact, I should probably be a little bit more accurate. I think it was late 20s, early 30s. That's when it was more. And then people started to move down to Pittsburgh, and then Brownsville became kind of it's really a ghost town. There are attempts here and there to revitalize it, but there are things like the first cast iron bridge was in Brownsville. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
First cast iron bridge.
Okay.
In Brownsville. That's a good history.
See what I learned today.
Trivia, that's right. I'm telling you.
Nothing wrong with that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I grew up there, and my parents I just think I have the best parents. My mom was an English teacher for 25 years. My dad taught, he was a professor at California University of PA. He taught English literature for the first 15 years of his career. Then he switched to earth science. Wow. So he is a giant of an intellectual. Like, he definitely is super well read. He knows how to draw. He taught me early on how to draw in so many different fields.
Got it.
And bring in analogs. And then my mom kind of really emphasized storytelling. So I have this affinity for storytelling. If you follow my work at all, you know I teach through Zen tales. I create Zen tales and that kind of stuff. I love that power of storytelling, but I got that foundation from my parents. I got that in my small town. I learned to really think and how to tie in information.
Your father went from literature to science.
Yeah.
That's almost a 180.
It is. I think he had background on both, and so when he kind of just went and made, for whatever reason, he made that shift. But he's published, textbooks, and it's just it's awesome. So I got to grow up in an environment that fostered intellectual development.
Got it.
I also was pushed early on to be able to read and learn different things. And I was talking about this recently. I loved philosophy. My dad would expose me to philosophy. And I remember the first time that I picked up G.W.F. Hegel, German philosopher, super convoluted. Like, you read the first paragraph and you say, seriously? Like, did you just make up words right there? And I remember thinking, when I get older, I'm going to explain things in a way that makes sense for people. I was a kid. I can remember thinking that, and honestly, I've spent my career doing that. Like, if you read my new book, like, you'll see I take concepts that can seem like in Antiadromia can seem so fancy, and we're gonna make it make so much sense. It's literally just moving from one extreme to the other. But my point is, I try to take those complex subjects and break them down.
So you recognized even when you were in your youth that you wanted to, for lack of a better way of putting it, to make the complex simple.
Exactly. And I didn't like when people were not patient with me, so I wanted to very much be patient. So as a teacher, like, I really have made a career out of being very patient with people. If you don't understand it, instead of me thinking, well, you're not getting it, my first thought is, well, I'm not presenting it in a way that's helpful for you. Because there are different learning styles. People take in information in different ways. So I always feel like, I was a professor. I was a tenured professor. I loved that career path. That was awesome. I wanted to do more, and we ended up moving and different things like that. But I loved my time teaching. And one of the things I loved is I would walk out every class and I would say, well, my colleagues, other professors would say, well, those kids don't care anymore, or this and that. I'd say, well, listen, these are who I'm paid to teach. These are the kids I'm paid to teach. So if they don't care, I got to find a way to help make them care, or make it so enticing that I want to draw them in. So I'd be standing on desks and running around. This is long before I got into TV and professional speaking. I just was like, this is my audience, and I want to captivate them because this information is powerful and it's life-changing. Like, the work I do, literally, I'm a licensed professional counselor of 20,000 plus hours of one-on-one sessions. And when you think about that, my daughter's 14. I was telling her, like, you put over time, like Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point, once you do something for enough time,
10,000
hours. And 20,000 times I sit down one-on-one sessions plus. I mean, it's more than that by this time. But when you do something long enough, you start to pick up patterns, and you start to be able to find things that are and settle into your expertise. And when you put that kind of effort into anything, well, I look around these guitars and I think I just haven't put in the hours yet. I'm putting them in. I'm learning.
I'm thinking you're probably going to.
I'm learning. But I love it. So really super passionate about all this stuff and giving people information. And what I was saying about the teaching is I always walked away when my colleagues would say, well, they don't want to learn. And I would say, well, wait a minute. What did I do effectively? What did I do that wasn't effective? And what can I do more effectively next time? And I've been asking myself those 3 questions every session I've left, every talk I've given for my whole career.
What university did you teach at?
I taught at University of Nevada, Reno. So I got my PhD at Duquesne University. I taught there for a year afterward. And then I moved out to University of Nevada, Reno, and taught there. Got tenure out there. Could have stayed there for life. But we were 3,000 miles away from family. Got it. So my wife, one day I said, what do you want to do? Our daughter was growing up without really being around her grandparents a lot. Right. We had some family members who were sick. So we feel blessed that we came back when we did. We had some, my wife's grandmother passed away. She had moved in with us. And so that was a tough time. My dad's, both his mom and his dad passed away. So being able to be here for my dad around that stuff, and to be able to be around for family, I think that was super important. And then my wife's father passed away a couple years ago, so we kind of like came at the right time.
It sounds like it.
We needed to be here. And I think the byproduct of that was coming here and making that move. When I had a pretty stellar career out west, I was a tenured professor. I ran a mental health organization. I co-founded the Center for People Convicted of Violent Crimes, and I was speaking, so I was busy. I was gone all the time. But the career part was going really well. But then when we think about family, what matters, my wife and I will be married 20 years this year. And she followed me wherever I went. And so what I said to one day, what do you want to do? She's like, I really want to move back. And I said, great, let's do it. So I kind of, at 38 years old, I gave up my whole career.
That's a whole title shift for you.
It's a whole shift.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because my dad, I said he was an earth scientist. He changed careers at 38. I changed careers at 38. I think that was pretty neat.
Part of the work that you do is with athletes now. Did you have an athletic background? Did you play sports?
I did. I kind of grew up and ate, slept, and breathed sports. I played football, basketball, baseball, track, boxing, kickboxing, all that kind of stuff growing up. So throughout school, I did all those main sports. And in college, I played baseball. I played at Virginia Tech, and then I transferred to Slippery Rock. Which I'm glad I did because I met my wife. And then sports-wise, I also hit a home run in the College World Series back in 97.
Well, that's something to be proud of.
It was fun.
For sure.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my brother was phenomenal baseball, played pro baseball for the Oakland A's in the minor leagues. And
it's my favorite team.
Back when Ricky Henderson, Dave Henderson, Harold Baines, and Jose Canseco were in the outfield. So it was a hard outfield to break
late 80s,
into.
early 90s, probably. Right.
Hard outfield to break into.
Sure, you'd think so, for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, so I always thought, well, maybe I could play. So I dedicated myself to sports. I really put a lot of effort into that. And then when I didn't make it, when I didn't get drafted, so what I did essentially was I put every effort that I would have put into working out, I put into studying, reading. Like I would be obsessed with it. Like I'd read 5 books a week for years. And I mean, my professor, I'd be in classes in grad school, and the professor would recommend a book. The first couple weeks, I would literally run to the library. I would jog from the class building to the library until I realized no one's coming. I'm not beating anybody. I was worried somebody else was going to pick up the book he recommended. And that was you just go on Amazon and just order whatever you want the next day. So you had to really go to the library. If that's the only copy they had, that's what you had to. Right. So I would run and I would get there and I would be like, man, I got to get this before someone else reads it. And
that's passion.
There was nobody else running. Like
I get it.
But I really learned, I put that passion of effort. It's always been work ethic. So I come from an extremely hardworking family. My mom went to work every day, came home, made dinner for everybody, every day. She gave homework to her students every day. She had it corrected and given back to them next day. You know, my dad nonstop working all the time.
Right.
Really always taught me. So one of the things that they taught me early on was poetry, and Gerard Manley Hopkins wrote a poem called "The Windhover," and there's a line in it that says, "Sheer plod makes plowed down Cillian shine." And basically, when you think about farming, when you just do the work over and you're tilling the soil, what's it take? Sheer plod. You just got to do it.
Right.
It's not just going to flip itself. You got to do it.
That's the sheer root of it all.
Exactly.
Right.
And so when I learned that, when my dad brought that to my awareness, I really liked that line, and it really kind of emphasized, it kind of to me highlighted how he lives, like let's just do it. If it needs done, you just do it and you keep doing it.
Okay.
Matter of fact, he told me his dad's advice to him. Now my dad and mom, they were first generation college students, you know, their parents didn't go through that kind of stuff.
Right.
But my dad said when he went to college, that his father, my grandfather, said to him, if you don't understand something, read it again. And if you don't understand it, read it again. If you don't understand it, read it again. Mm-hmm. And that advice, we can get it here so fast, but skip over it here.
Right.
Think about how many people out there will get it. Well, I don't understand it, so it's either them or me, but whatever. Yeah, just dismissed. Mm-hmm. Or they might say, I know it takes effort, but I don't want to put that in.
Right.
But what if you just said, you know what, you can do it? Stephen Covey once said, he tells the story, this is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that I think I just read the other day, about 20 years ago.
Right.
So I hope I get this accurately, but I believe he had a situation where he was neighbors with a guy who was a rocket scientist, and he said to him one day when he saw his neighbor fixing his lawnmower, hopefully this is familiar, but he goes, I wish I could do that. And his neighbor said, well, you can, you just don't take the time. Mm-hmm. And so he realized the next time something happened, he took the time. He was like, well, I can do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true for us in life. We can do it, but it's going to take effort.
There's a price to pay. And I think for whatever reason, you know, I don't like to throw the word laziness around, but it's an applicable word, I think, at times. There's a lot of human laziness and it isn't intentionally said from me to hurt anyone. It's just that's how I describe us making a choice not to do something that might be a little tough.
Yeah, and the question really comes down to, do we want it as badly as we think we want it? Mm-hmm. Like I remember one time I was doing a session with a woman, a mother, in therapy, and I said to her, I want to ask you this, and I'm going to say this with love. Do you want to be a better mother, or do you really just want to appear to be a better mother? And she got silent, and then she broke down, and she really kind of had a visceral breakdown, and she said, I really don't care about being a mother. I care what people think about me as a mother.
That's honest, though.
It's honest. And I know sometimes people hear stuff like, oh, I can't believe that. Well, this is the reality. Like, I deal in reality. I don't deal in the way we think the world should be. I deal in the way the world is.
Right.
But I remember her working through that, and part of what we ended up working on was figuring out how she can get herself to get through some of the sadness that she was experiencing, because she was experiencing some depression, mm-hmm. which then kind of contributes to people not caring about things, mm-hmm. even when it comes to caring about people like your children. So we kind of work through that stuff, but that honesty, it's important, because a lot of times people say, I want this. It's like somebody told me one time, I speak all over the country, and somebody said, well, I can do that. I can stand on stage and give a speech. Like, why do you get to do it? And I was like, great, do it. Like, absolutely go do it. It's, mm-hmm. I didn't just wake up and do this. Like, mm-hmm. To give you an example, like when you go to speak, I do a lot of work in the prison system. Right. You know, I kind of, this is an analogy of what this is like. I went in, I was supposed to speak for an hour at most, maybe 45 minutes. And so I came in there, there's 200 inmates, we're in an auditorium, so we're at a maximum security prison, there's 200 inmates right there, there's no stuff in between us, like, I'm gotta be, project my voice loudly so they can hear it. And right before I started, I said, so you want me to be done at 7? It was 6 o'clock. He said, oh, no, you're on till 8. And he said, we'll take questions till 8:30. And I go, in 1 second, I just added another hour and a half to your. So it's not like you just don't memorize a speech and stand on stage. Right. I believe that the best advice I give for any people who want to do speaking is, it's not about what you say, it's about how you live. People bring me in because I live this message. Got it. If you saw me being angry in traffic on the way over here, mm-hmm. or even if I tried to fake it and I actually let's pretend I do get angry on the road. If I did, you could see that. Now, why are you going to come to me? I'm a level 5 anger management certification. That means there's 3 other people in the world that have this. So it's
Right.
not like I didn't get there
Right.
by saying, you know,
Right.
let me put on a front. I live
Right.
this message. And I think if you want to be a speaker, you have to live your message.
And that's I think it comes back to the word authentic, right? I mean,
Yes.
you're extremely authentic based upon what your craft. You live your craft.
Yes, that's it. And actually, authenticity. So we'll talk about yield theory in a bit, but one of I have 7 fundamental components, and the first one is authenticity.
Right.
Because people can spot a fake.
No
so
question.
I do stuff in a prison. If you ever walk in a prison. Have you ever gone to
I
a
have
prison?
not.
So, but you go in a prison and immediately you're going to hear anything you were insecure about. Somebody's going to be yelling it at you.
Right.
So you better figure out how to be thick-skinned because people are going to say anything to try to get to you to see if they can get. Because
Right.
a lot of times when you're incarcerated, that's your weapon, is being able to. You can't move the person physically because you're on one side of a door.
Right.
And so sometimes people can develop the really poor habit of trying to get people. You know, saying some awful stuff. So when you go in a prison, though, inmates watch people all day long. So if you walk in and you're not real, people will see that in a second. You try to be one thing, you can't do that. Now, I was authentic long before I started to work in the prison system, but I think it's a good way to an analogy for people listening to say or watching to say, yeah, you do want to be genuine. In other words, if you are really trying to learn peace, in one sentence, you can't be like, oh, we should all be peaceful, and then somebody disagrees with you and you tear them up. Well, then you don't really want that. Like, you really want everybody to agree with you. You don't really want peace.
Right.
So it's a challenge to live it.
I can't even imagine, because now I would hope that with your knowledge and your skill set in the area you work in, you have tactics, obviously, and methods and so forth to correct yourself when you feel you're getting angry. You know it so well. And that's what we're hoping to get today from you is obviously information on the book and some techniques too. But do you still have your moments? I mean, we're all human. I'm sure there's,
It's not that I don't experience anger. I just understand how to deal with it. It's not that I don't feel anger. And it's not, when I was indicating even that last moment ago that it's a challenge, I say it's a challenge for people to learn. Once you learn it, I don't think it's much of a challenge. In other words, there is no challenge in me driving on the road and getting even frustrated. I go out on the road. When I leave here and drive away, I expect there will be people who will be distracted. I expect there will be people who are struggling, sad, maybe struggling. Maybe it's teenagers who are struggling in self-centeredness or a limited vision of the world. Am I going to be angry with them because when I was a teenager, I cut people off?
Right.
So I walk into my experience of driving with the expectations that many things can arise. People are not there to be. I'm not the center of the universe, so the people are in their own world too.
Right.
And because I align my expectations with that reality, I'm more prepared for it when I encounter it.
One of your talks, and by the way, I want to say this a couple of times, share with our audience the way they can get a hold of you. You got a tremendous group of videos, very good videos. He'll take you to video school on his website. And how they reach, the easiest way to reach you is where?
Yeah, definitely. So I love when people check out my YouTube channel. It's free resource.
Absolutely right.
But I'm connecting with people all over the world. And so it's really moving. So you just go to YouTube, type in Dr. Christian Conte, Conte.
Subscribe to his channel.
Subscribe. I would love that. Yeah, definitely
subscribe to his channel.
But yeah, that's where I do.
Well, there was one on there that I actually saw a couple of days ago, and it was, you gave the advice of the word maybe.
Oh yeah.
And I think we were almost headed there
no, that's it. But that's great. So I'm just hitting me like, if you really want one word anger management, that's probably the best word you can think of. Okay. Here's why. So let's say there's a box between, even if we look at this box right here, even this, what's in between us, you can see what's on your side. I can see what's on my side. And now if this is all squared away so we can't see on this other side.
Got it.
The only way for you to know what's on my side or me to know what's on your side is for me to listen. I can't tell you, no, I know what's on your side. Even if I had been around there previously, maybe when I came around here, you put something new there. And so this sounds simple, but or maybe it sounds silly, but I promise this is kind of the key. So if I know in all reality that anytime, like on your side of the box, something new could pop up, I'm not going to pretend I see something that I don't see. That's arrogance. There's always something on another side of the box, and this is kind of my mentality. there's always something else. So I say, maybe there's more to the story than what I see. When someone's angry, maybe someone comes up to you and they lash out at you and they call you by name and they cuss at you. And you go, well, that was personal toward me. Maybe that person was going through intense inner pain, and for whatever reason, they felt safe enough to use your name and say it about you, but had nothing to do with you. You see, there's always more to everybody's story. And so it becomes very arrogant when we think we know exactly what's going on. And I'll show you how that becomes arrogance. It's certainty. So certainty, we used to think, well, if you have beliefs, political, religious, whatever they are, whatever you're certain about, that's actually an emotion. And so Robert Burton, the leading neuroscientist in the world, has demonstrated that when people say they're certain, I know this to be true, that's not a thought, that's not a cognition, that's an emotion.
I got it.
And that's powerful, because true humility, like everyone you encounter, most people I've ever encountered will say, I still have more to learn. Oh yeah, there's more to learn. But the moment someone disagrees with them, takes a different stance, no, it's not, it's my way. Wait a minute, I thought you had more to learn. And so true humility is, I think that's who we are. That's our essence, is to be humble and want to learn and be curious. But I think our egos creep in and say, nope, I have all the answers, and it's
so
my
is
way.
belief an emotion then?
Well, it really is. Belief, when you're saying, I know this is to be true, it's not a thought.
You don't cognitively know it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that a belief can't be a thought, because a belief can be a thought. Okay. But I'm saying that it's when we're certain, that we're so sure. So let's take even the most rudimentary principles of a divine being. Whether people believe in a divine being or they believe there is no divine being, when they believe it with conviction, that's an emotional, but they're not saying, because we don't have an answer. We don't have a black and white answer.
We don't have an intellectual answer,
right?
A science answer.
Right. And so when I've heard people who are devout in their religious faith say, I feel sorry for people who believe this. I have heard people on this side say, I feel sorry for, it's unbelievable, but the position I've had, and this has shaped me, 20,000 hours of experience doing this, meeting people all over the world, everyone has a perspective.
Sure.
And this whole concept of it's only my way, it's whatever I believe, whatever I think, that's the right way. That's silly, but that's ego, but that's human, that's our desires to be like, I need to be right.
Yeah, why do we have that burning desire to be right? Humans, it's such a burning, passionate desire that destroys so much good that never even gets a chance to start, because and do you think people, if you ask people, I guess, Christian, they would say, well, I have an ego. We all have an ego. I know what an ego is. Do they really know? Do they really understand the destructive nature of the human ego?
No, I don't think so. I think that's the challenge for all of us. We do have an ego. I don't think ego is wrong and bad in and of itself. In fact, here's what ego is. I like that this is a visual, because a visual is a podcast. So let's say we use this thing right here.
That's fine.
So an iceberg is primarily, if the iceberg goes to the top, is this the camera here?
Oh yeah, I can see.
Okay, so
everybody can see.
So if this is an iceberg, and let's say this part's underwater, and this part's the top of the iceberg that's above water. Well, the center of this top part that's above water, this is consciousness, and this is the unconscious.
Okay.
So think about an iceberg like this. This is the unconscious, this is the conscious. Well, the center of consciousness is the ego. And we think, look, this is the center of who I am. But this is very far from the center of who we are. This is the center of who we are. This is essence.
Okay.
But ego locks us in, and here's why. And I have a reason. I have conjecture about this. So from an evolutionary perspective, we traveled in packs, in groups. Larger groups than Neanderthals traveled in. In fact, when they compared some of the brains of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, here's what they found. Neanderthals were bigger bodied. They lived on mountain tops. They had they have larger brains, but a larger portion of their brain was devoted to the cerebellum, the back part of your brain, occipital lobes, eyesight, and coordination. Because bigger bodies on mountain ranges need to see farther. They had a smaller portion of their brain devoted to social connection.
Okay.
So Homo sapiens, we had a larger portion of our brain devoted to social connections. Here's what this means. There was a great anthropologist, I apologize for forgetting the person's name, that suggested that maybe Neanderthals died out because they tried to do it alone, whereas we realized just how much we needed each other.
How about that?
Now, let's take this into being right. if we're out traveling, it's 10,000 years ago, and I come back to the group and I say, hey, there's food, 6 miles this way, and everybody hikes that way and there's no food, well, then I was wrong, and people are going to be like, screw it, we don't need you. Now they kick me out of the group. I don't have a good chance to survive.
Got it.
So I needed people to know that I have value.
Got it.
And I think that we could be hardwired to say, I'm right, I'm certain of this, because, oh, no, you're wrong, we're kicking you out. Wait, no, I was right, I swear. I need you to believe
Almost
this.
like a protective mechanism.
Yeah, and so I think our desire to connect with others and be valued makes us believe that we need to be right. But it's not 10,000 BC, it's not 10,000 years ago. It's we can still be in the group and be wrong.
Yeah, it's almost, we should be rational. We should be more rational as humans today in 2020, right?
Yeah.
In our thinking, even in our emotions, more rational thinking.
Right, and it's unconscious. This isn't conscious. So this is like, there are different types of rage that we experience.
Okay.
For instance, one of the types of rage is called abandonment rage. And so you might think of somebody, or somebody might be listening out there who's in a relationship, and they get so angry, and they're so angry because they're thinking, this person's going to leave me. And that fear of abandonment can cause a fight. You can literally create arguments out of that. Mm-hmm. So here's what I say: if this is our body, and my body feels a certain way, my mind wants to match my body. So let's say you and I down 3 energy drinks. Mm-hmm. Our body's going to flood with cortisol, adrenaline. We're going to feel heart's going to race fast. We might shake a little bit. So our body's going to feel physiologically anxious. Well, then our mind steps in and goes, oh no, was I supposed to be here? Was I supposed to be there? Did I miss a meeting? Whatever. Now that's more cortisol. That goes up, and then you start to build. And so anxiety, when our mind wants to match our body, now here's why this is so important. I'm talking too much, but I want to tell you this.
You're not talking enough. Keep going.
Let me tell you this. The mind. So when we create this story. So if someone feels like I feel like you're going to leave me, and they get anxiety.
Okay.
We would rather lash out in anger, because remember back at the beginning, we don't want to be anxious with all that excess cortisol and adrenaline.
Right.
So I yell. And then when I let out that endorphins, I feel bad. Oh, no, I feel really bad. Now I'm back into building up that anxiety again. But there's a reason why people, when they feel anxious, create drama around them. I call it crisis-prone individuals. Mm-hmm. They create crises to make sense out of why they're feeling the way they do.
Interesting. I mean, the country's really medicated for anxiety, isn't it? There's a... Yeah.
Well, people are looking... It's painful. People struggle with anxiety. So whether people are... drink or use drugs recreationally or through pharmaceutical, we have a difficult time experiencing what we're experiencing.
Is the pace of society a part of the reason for the increased anxiety in citizens, do you think?
I think so. I think for sure. Definitely. I mean, I definitely think that. I think I definitely need to travel more throughout the world and see other places and experience them rather than just read about them. I've read about lots of places where people are more laid back because the pace of life is laid back. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're in an area, you can see this just even in our own country. There are certain areas I speak all over, and there are some places I come and it's kind of real laid back. You might go into a gas station and someone starts a conversation. You're having maybe in the South, I'm having a conversation with somebody for 10 minutes at a gas station, where in New York, nobody cares. Just get going, let's roll. And it's because there's so many people versus fewer people. Mm-hmm. So I think your environment shapes how you are, for sure. Influences you, at least. It influences you.
Talk a little bit before we get into the book. Talk a little bit about, I'm fascinated how you decided that you were going to work in the prison system.
Yeah, I wish I could have like that one moment, like a light bulb moment.
Right.
Light bulb. I wish I could have one moment where it was like, oh, it was this. I think I've never really liked the idea of people being locked up. Not saying that there aren't consequences, and I'm not. Mm-hmm. There are some people I don't think should ever leave solitary confinement, because I know that they've raped every cellie they ever had. Raped men, women, children. I wouldn't put them with someone else and make someone else the next victim.
Right.
So there are definitely people who I believe cannot handle being around others. But in general, I just don't like that concept. So I try to think, all right, if somebody's locked up, if I was locked up, what would I want? I would want to learn a different path so I could be free from that. Mm-hmm. But I think the locked up that I really try to help people be free from isn't physical, it's psychological.
Okay.
So it could be inmates, but it could be you, me, it's everybody, it's all of us.
Okay.
So my tagline is there are two kinds of people in the world. There are people who have issues and dead people. If you're alive, you have issues. So do I. We all do.
Okay.
And we get locked in our psychology. We get locked in that ego. We get locked in that ego, and we get locked in the way we see the world, because it's very scary to think that the world could be different than what we believe. And part of that freedom is awareness, learning more about ourselves, why we think the way we think, why we believe the way we believe.
See, I'm fascinated by that work, because I would think if you were speaking to prisoners, there probably was quite a few that were going to be in there a long time.
I work with a lot. I do work on death row, and
okay, so how it's fascinating to me, and also just horrifying to me. How do you bring hope to someone who doesn't see any hope?
Yeah, couples, young couples, somebody falls in love. My daughter's reading Romeo and Juliet right now. You think of young love and this idea of, I want to be together, I want this to be eternal. Well, eternity doesn't have to do with time. It has to do with embracing the moment. If you embrace the moment, that's the eternity. And so when you think of that concept, there's hopelessness when we think about what can I do out here and here and here, but when I can embrace this moment no matter where I am, that's freeing. You can make a hell out of heaven or a heaven out of hell in your mind, and when you can have peaceful thoughts, when you can come to peace with your existence, that's not hopeless.
Okay.
There are people who are in prison who are freer than people who are out on the outside.
That's interesting.
Think about somebody on the outside who believes, I can't leave this town. I can't go here. I can't drive there. I couldn't do that. And in their mind, they're prison. They're physically capable to go drive somewhere else. They're physically capable to go do something else, but they've locked themselves in. Or worse, think about people, it gets to this election and politics. People get so wrapped up in whatever they believe, they're imprisoned by it. They don't like the other side, yet they watch stuff all day long about the other side. That would be like me saying, man, I go to a sewage and I say, I hate the smell, so I'm going to voluntarily come here every day because I hate the smell, so I'm going to come here to be around it. Why would you choose to be around it? That's prison when you don't even realize that. I have people tell me all the time, I watch this, I get so angry. Well, then why do you watch it? That's like the old joke my dad told me when I was a little kid. I have to go to the doctor because every time I do this, it hurts. Well, quit doing that.
That whole politics thing, it took me a long time to figure that out, but I did eventually, and my life is so much better now that I don't partake in it, I don't discuss it, but I'm in the minority. I look around and everybody's got, not only does everybody have an opinion, but they want to be right.
Exactly.
They want to be right.
Exactly. And it's like, hey, if this is just, so my experience has taught me that we don't have the answers. There is more. There's always more to what we're seeing. So I'm reticent to go in and say, well, it's all this or it's all that.
Right.
There's a balance, and I think it's silly. I think it's actually just probably good for people to tune in. Like, so we're talking like this. If I go like that, your brain picked that up because automatically we see that shift in movement. So if you're in news, you obviously want to say something that grabs somebody's attention, and you want to keep people fired up, because when you get people fired up, they're tuning in.
Of course.
If I'm afraid, I need to know what might happen. And anybody who's invested not anybody, most people who are invested on either side of politics, it's about fear. Well, if that side's going to go in, the sky's going to fall. Well, if that sky goes in, the sky's going to fall. And so you're constantly caught up in that. What I've learned to see is step back and go, people are passionate about what they believe. It's unrealistic to think that your way is the definitive right way for all of humanity, for all of life and all the universe. I mean, and your way is the right way. That's fairly arrogant.
It is. Well, I think when it comes to political beliefs, at least in this country, especially the past 7-8 years, where social media has become such a dominant factor of modern day society, it's given the voice to everybody, which is good and not so good. Right,
exactly. So I now that's I really agree with that. That fits with me because I love that people can have a voice, But the challenge then is we're putting emphasis on, like, let's say someone's really struggling, and we've all been there. We've all struggled. We've all said things we didn't mean. We've all said things that we wished, that we immediately, as soon as it left our mouths, we said, well, I learned, now I wish I would never say it. And maybe we've learned and never said that again. Then some people continue and will do things like that. But the point is this, we've all done that. In a world of social media, the moment someone says that, it becomes the center of our attention. So now instead of us going, that person just said something that is not very healthy, let me move on, we go, let's highlight it, talk about it, have news stories about it. And it could have been a random like people will pull, if you watch journalists today, they'll pull random Twitter feeds.
Right.
They could have created their own account, a fake account, said it and been like, look, people are saying this. And it's silly. So it's not a matter of, I would never say don't listen to anything, but I would also say question everything. I used to say that when I would teach. I would say question everything, including everything I say. If people are watching this right now, listening to this right now, question it. Don't just take it in. I could be completely wrong. I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with what I know in this moment, but I'm open that I can learn something entirely new in the next moment. And when you really feel comfortable with that, like that's why I'm good to discuss any of those topics with people. I'm not invested in one side or the other, and I've seen so much that I'm really kind of not illusioned by what when people buy into stuff. I've worked with some really high-ranking people on both sides of the fence, and I've seen some pretty disappointing things personally outside of what's on the public realm. And at times it's disheartening because people get so invested in a figure or a person.
Well, that was my next question to you. I'm so glad you went there. And I came about this Christian like almost completely organically. It was the blessing. I realized right away that, wow, I've done some really great things in my life, and nothing that ever happened in Washington, D.C. or Harrisburg had a real direct effect on my ability to do things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was a light bulb moment. Like, it doesn't matter which side's up or down. It really never affected my life. So the broader question for you is, do you think we spend more time being anxious, worrying about others' actions and words when they really have very little effect on what we could do?
Right.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. Of course, there are policies that directly affect people and things that could make an impact on people's daily lives, daily lives. Sometimes we feel the effects of that, sometimes we don't. But I agree wholeheartedly that we put a lot of emphasis on what might happen, and that's fed by everyone around us. So we have something called confirmation bias. If we want to see someone as dumb, we're going to see them as dumb. We want to see them as mean, we'll see them as mean. No matter what they do, they could do a million nice things, we're going to see them as mean. The moment they sneeze the wrong way, no matter what.
That's the current political environment, I believe.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's so, I believe something we would want some sort of shift to change in this mentality.
Okay.
Because I don't think that's healthy for us as a nation to continually be fed everything's terrible, it's the end of the world. Here's what it comes down to: extreme language. So when I go into prisons, I go into prisons, and here's what I do. I try to help change the culture of the way people communicate. And one of the first things I do is say, could you imagine if I had a wish, it would be that we could change extreme language. In other words, instead of saying, nobody ever believes this, it could be, I talked to 2 people today who disagreed with me. Now, there's a vast difference between I talked to 2 people who disagreed with me. I got on Twitter and I saw 31 statements that agreed with me. Okay, versus everyone believes this. This is awful. So Ludwig Wittgenstein was a philosopher at the turn of the 20th century, and he wrote a book called Philosophical Investigations, and he said, there are no real problems in life, there are only problems in language. So if I say, well, hey, it's getting bright in here, could you turn down the couch? You're like, wait, what does it mean, the lights? Oh, so words have to mean something. So in the same way that the word light means the light, the way that helps us see, and the couch might be something we sit on, the same is true when it comes to terrible. When we think about things like 9/11, that was terrible. Now we can define that as terrible. Someone disagreeing with your opinion, it's not the same thing as thousands of people being killed. It's not the same thing. So now let me find an accurate term. You disagreed with something I believe strongly. Okay, guess what? We're human beings. Is everybody supposed to believe everything you believe the exact same way? when we start to find accurate, balanced language, we start to find accurate, balanced emotions.
So you're saying that that's not a recent phenomenon. Humans have been screwing this up communication-wise for a long time. Then.
Very much so. What's different about social media is, and it depends how you use it, because I'm on Twitter. I don't scroll through it. I don't read what other people do.
God bless you.
I literally just wake up. I meditate every day. I say a statement to the world. I picture I'm standing in front of 7 billion people. What would I say to add to something to the world?
Okay.
And I do that every day. Now, social media doesn't control me, but there are people for whom, and I've spoken with, that say it basically controls their lives because, well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that.
Yeah.
You have no idea who that is. No idea who that is. I respond to people every once in a while on my YouTube channel. If people comment, we get more comments than I'm able to get to. And sometimes we have like an intern and my team with us around as we're trying to go through these comments and get to as many as we can get to.
Sure.
But when people are angry, and the vast majority of comments are ridiculously kind, I'm so thankful. The people I'm meeting, people are saying really moving words about the stuff that happens on the YouTube channel. But of course, every once in a while you get this F you bald-headed MF, or like, I hate you, whatever, or like, I hate your family, or whatever. You're gonna burn, you and your family are gonna burn forever because you don't believe what I believe. Like, wow, like you really felt the need to say it. So no matter what it is, I say, I wish you much, sounds like you're struggling, I wish you much peace. But I don't just say that, I genuinely mean that. People, no one who is in a place of peace is going to try to hurt someone else. It's only people who are hurting.
Got it.
You ever see somebody walking around in complete peace and then making fun of somebody? It's not going to happen.
Right.
If you're in peace, you're not looking for that.
Well, in a more I don't know, disjointed way, isn't that somewhat about your theory of maybe? Because we don't know what that person's life is really like who's lashing out that way. It's kind of ridiculous to us that they would write such vitriol.
Right.
But there's something going on there that causes them to do that, right?
Exactly. And one time someone said something, and I wrote, and they really kind of lashed out, and I wrote back and I said, I'm so sorry to see that you must be having a tough day. I definitely sent you much peace, brother, because the name was like a Mike or something like that. The person wrote back and said, I can't believe you actually took time to write that. I'm really embarrassed. I'm 14. I'm a girl. I just called myself a boy so that I can say whatever I want to say and just fire out at people. And I can't believe that you actually took time and were nice to me and answered me after I fired off something stupid. I'm really sorry I said that. I was like, first of all, that's phenomenal that you own that. That's amazing. And I really just assumed you were struggling. And what it taught me was I try not to say brother, because I don't know if that's really the person, if it, because that's just my maybe natural vernacular. If I'm with somebody.
Well, you see Mike, I mean, odds are likely. The odds are.
Right. So what I've learned though is you don't know. So who are you getting? It could be a 10-year-old in his parents' basement who's angry at something. Who was told they had to look at something. Maybe they looked at the wrong video. One time somebody's comment on my video was about something to do with like the woodworking or whatever. So they literally watched the wrong video. It had nothing to do with anything with what I was saying or anything I was doing or anything at all. It was clearly about a different video.
Right.
But the person obviously took time to give it a thumbs down and say whatever they wanted to say. And it's comical.
I know.
Like, why would I get angry with that? Like, people just feel really entitled. If I see something, I get to say it's terrible.
And that's
or
that
good
even
or...
platform thing. And I get that. And it really, I got into an intellectual, I presumed it was an intellectual conversation. Not sure what I was adding to it, but it was a great conversation. And I really got taken to task for the following statement. I want to get your impression. I made the comment, I love the fact that the internet's great. It has leveled the playing field and it's given a voice to those who may have not had it prior to the internet. That's good and that's bad. And before I could even get my next word out, I was pounced on. Like, what do you mean? You're discriminating, and it wasn't really meant in a discriminatory way. It was just that 10-year-old masquerading as an anonymous person with his dad's Jack Daniels bottle that evening, going out and trashing other people, and we're in a culture where people take things personally.
Sure.
That's not a voice that probably should be out there at that time.
Absolutely. So no, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, knowing absolutely nothing about the conversation. If you were talking to a man or woman,
it was a mixed crowd.
I'm saying it doesn't matter. The point is, without me knowing anything about it, whatever the group or person was talking to you obviously had their own projections about that.
That's what I thought.
Because the truth is, of course, it's not healthy. If somebody's drunk, you don't say, "Here are the keys, drive a car." So
Good
if somebody
analogy.
is in a really awful state psychologically, here you go. Represent yourself in the best possible way. Because remember, when you put it out there, it doesn't go away.
Ever.
And
Hear that,
this
kids? Ever.
Right. And so, but we master what we practice. So are we not setting people up for failure, saying, listen, when you're struggling in your worst emotional state, go ahead and speak to the entire world? I think that's actually unethical and dangerous for people, because now we have kids who say something, then get labeled for the rest of their lives, because we're in a witch hunt age. So if someone says something and it's ineffective, I just can't imagine that what kids or young people have to go through, because the second they say something, that sticks with them. Now, were they really ready to have it frozen in time? This is new. This is new for our species, that for the first time you can say something at 6, 7, 8, 10 years old that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. When was that ever out there before?
Never.
And so we have people who are going through changes, hormonal changes, young people, and they just are more impulsive, because that's human nature.
What if they had the wrong influences in their life at that time?
Absolutely.
And as they go through life, better influences come in. They are living an admirable life, and they said something at 7 years old.
Right. And here's the fascinating aspect to this concept. People are extremely quick to judge others, but the moment you go bring that about someone else, well, no, I didn't mean that, or that was a long time ago. Well, they didn't have cameras back then. Also, because they didn't have cameras back when you were young, you're okay to crucify this person because there were when this person was young. Like, we are very quick. So we judge other people, see our actions, not our intentions. So I teach us all, we need to be mindful that people are going to see it doesn't matter what you mean to do or don't mean to do.
Right.
It only matters what you actually do.
Right.
So first of all, we want to be mindful of that. Something we've taught our daughter. So she's 14 and she's aware when I say something, it doesn't matter what I meant to say, it matters what I actually say. So you want to be mindful of what you're posting, what you're putting out there, because it's there permanently. Then the other thing is this: we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. So we've got this society of people who are really quick to witch hunt someone else. But the moment the tables are turned, you go, let's talk about the mistakes you've made. Well, no, this was a long time ago, or that didn't matter to me, or mine weren't that big. So we minimize the pain we cause others, but maximize the pain they cause us.
Is that a recent phenomenon, or have humans always been doing that?
Humans have always done that. Here's what the impulsivity of this social connection has done.
Okay.
It's allowed us to give a voice to these impulsive thoughts. These aren't the thoughts that should be the centerpiece of what we're discussing.
That was my point. What you just said. That was my point. Where you encapsulated the whole thing. And again, it's wonderful that we've leveled the playing field of communication. The internet's that's a blessing for humankind. I think.
Yeah. It's
made the world smaller.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's given a voice to people at times in their life probably are doing themselves more harm than good by using it.
There was a guy came up to me, it was an inmate, he was going to get out of prison. He said, I wrote a book and I want to get it published. I said, wonderful. We live in a time where literally any human being can publish a book. And you can do it through Amazon. You can do it for free, and you'll have yourself a published book. You can walk around and say you're an author. You could put 25 blank pages in, stamp a title on it, and say I'm an author. So we live in a world where it's that easy. So if you really want to write a book, boom, you're done. You got it. Right. He goes, okay, great. He said, now I need everybody to read it. And I said, so does everybody else. Everybody who writes a book obviously wants everybody to read it. Right. He's like, no, but people need to read mine. And I was like, guess what? Everyone who puts effort into writing a book believes they're doing it because people need to read it. Like, obviously we're putting effort into it. So the difference is, yes, there's complete access. Anybody can do a show. We can have a show on YouTube. You could do anything on YouTube.
We're sitting here today
and have a show. I created a YouTube channel. You created a show. Like there wasn't like somebody sitting there going, you have to do this, this, and this for it. It was us saying we're passionate about something. We want to share something. I would like to believe that the stuff we're doing is positive with positive intentions. And the point I think I'm trying to make, and I think we're both talking about, is maybe how people can go the wrong way. Like, so if a young person's saying, well, I can make this channel too, I'm going to make it about making fun of people. Okay, well, you have access. There's no filter on that. I don't know that that's what's best for the universe. but yes, you can do it. So we have more access. People can be authors. And now it's funny because when you look on people's Twitter's accounts and feeds and things like that, like the titles or their how they define themselves in that stuff, it'll be like, I'm a influencer, I'm a this or that. Like you're you know,
welcome to the internet age.
And now everybody puts all this front on, and it's interesting because there are a lot of people who are doing things that are highly successful that aren't putting it on social media.
Right.
So I'll be honest, and in full disclosure, when I started to do all this stuff, like I would definitely try to promote everything I was doing and let people know. I have found that the more genuinely successful I've become, I don't really have time to put anything on there. So I don't really post stuff unless somebody tells me, or my management team will say, let's post this or whatever.
Right.
That's not my mentality, is let me tell people what I'm doing. My mentality is to do the work I'm doing.
Got it.
So like when I write something, like obviously I want to share it. I feel beyond blessed that there are people like you who come give this an opportunity to talk about like this new book, Walking Through Anger. But at the end of the day, like I'm working because I want to impact the world. Like I'm not working so that I can show people, I'm doing this. I don't care what your thought is about that.
Okay, so the internet and apps in general, Facebook, Instagram, I guess there's one called TikTok now. These major apps, the major apps that are the platforms for communication, have created their own lure to mainly younger people, and they create a life to appease a fictitious audience. And I think that is, how do you see that?
That's true, absolutely.
How do you feel about that?
I think that. I mean, I think a lot of people put so much effort into, I want this image to be this, and then what is the expectation? The people are going to see this image and say, this is...
Be fooled?
So I made I do these statements and every day, and one of them that I had, I think fits with what I try to teach is this. You don't have none of us, we don't have followers like the Buddha had followers, or like Jesus had followers, or Muhammad had followers. We don't have followers like that, but the title is followers.
Right.
But that's not, people aren't subscribing to you because they're your followers. And listen to the ego that gets built by that. My followers love with my picture. Guess what? They liked your picture as they scrolled through in like 700 other pictures within that 1 minute scan plan. So it's not having followers, it's people are curious.
Right.
About what you're posting. They might want to see a little bit in, because that's all we kind of want to get it's voyeuristic. I want to see what's going on with this person's life. But the miscommunication happens when we, and I'm talking about miscommunication to ourselves, when we convince ourselves people are stopping and pausing and staring at our picture and, I've scrolled to the perfect one, now this is they're like flipping through a million of them, and I hit like, or I don't hit like, whatever. Like you're just, it's not the effort. So we have a very skewed vision of, I've got followers. I don't believe that. Like, I appreciate everyone who subscribes and tunes into the work I'm doing. I'm beyond grateful for that. I'm humble. When I hear from people, we had somebody write in from Paris, France, and South Africa to the show the other night, all over. Beautiful. I'm so humbled by that. I don't think that they follow me like I'm this leader. I think that I'm putting out information that's helpful. Right. And when people say, I feel this helps me, so I want to subscribe because I want to get more of that information. But I'm not illusioned to think that that's the end of their day. They stop with whatever I write that day and that's it. Or did they even have time to read it all or watch it all?
Right. We've also turned the statistical data of those likes, dislikes, followers, unfollowing, and we've actually kind of made it currency.
We have.
To a certain degree.
Absolutely. But if you have enough followers, people who follow your account, that's really what it is. If you have enough people follow your account, then people will say, well, let's sponsor this person and let's give it in. So it really is. And then the trick of it is, there are ways for people to buy followers and buy accounts. Yep. And so now you don't even know, does this person really have that many people?
Yeah.
Or they just... Right. Or people will follow a bunch of people and then unfollow everybody, and then it looks like they're followed by all these people, and it's so goofy.
It's and you know, we've got a Facebook page here, an Instagram page, we got a YouTube channel, so we're trying to grow our show. And the nature of what we do is, we've had some guests that were an international musician on here, so we had interest from their country. So we gained a lot of followers that wanted to see that particular show, but they're not on our channel. I'm not naive to believe that they're on our channel every day looking at it, because if it was, every time we post something, there'd be 9,000 likes. Right. So I understand what it is. I don't view it as currency. I think social media is a wonderful platform, especially to connect with people and use correctly, for sure. Wouldn't you agree?
It is. I mean, if you can be the one who's in control, then it's wonderful. In other words, I want to post a message, a conscious statement. I want to start my day by posting a conscious message to the world. So that's how I choose to do it. If you purposely want to use it, or you want to get information about something,
sure,
wonderful, great. But to engage in this dialogue through there, like I won't, like people will try to, sometimes I'll see it on my notifications on Twitter that people try to engage a conversation in it. I won't engage in it. Like because Twitter's not a conversation. It's whatever 100 and so many characters.
But it's turned into a big argument.
Right, but it's not. So I wrote this article. I have a couple books called, one's life lessons, another one's teaching stories. They're 1 to 2 page stories with lessons.
Right.
One of them I call no mic drop. In other words, people will say, "Oh, I made a point. Oh, drop the mic." But the truth is, as long as we're alive, there's always more to say. So in life, there is no mic drop. There is no moment where you say, "I've said the final word on anything," and it's pure ego to believe, "Well, I said it and there's nothing else to say." That's ego. There's always more to say as long as we're alive.
And before the internet was a thing, just in daily conversations, there's always those people who are consumed by ego to the point where they had to get the last word.
Yeah.
Right? The last word. I have to have the last word of this. The last word of this conversation is mine.
And someone tuning into this conversation might say, "Well, what is this guy about? Like, how does this have to do with anger?" This all has to do with anger, because it all develops our worldview. This is how the world should be. So I say that there are 2 worlds we live in. One is what I call the cartoon world. That's our world of shoulds. People should be paying attention to everything I write. People should be buying my... Then there's the real world. People are locked in their own space. People are encountering their own things. As long as I align my expectations with the cartoon world, I'm let down and probably angered. So in other words, he shouldn't have said that. Now I'm angry. She shouldn't have done that. Now I'm angry. Or if I align my expectations with reality, I say they did it. Now how do I deal with it? Because I'm going to come back. I mentioned earlier, I alluded to a term, enantiodromia, a while back. Sounds fancy. It means we have a tendency with opposite dromedary walking. So we're like literally walking in the opposite directions. We go from one extreme to the other.
Right.
So we have a tendency in this to say, well, if I shouldn't expect people to be exactly what I want, I guess I shouldn't expect them to, I guess I should expect the worst. I'm not saying expect the worst. That's not reality either. Reality is this person might cut you off. They might not cut you off. But if you're driving down the road, there is a possibility that they could get distracted.
Right.
And your belief that you don't get distracted is you minimizing it. Because the truth is you do distract. You cut people off. You do this and that. It's just what happens is because you saw your intentions, you go, what's the big deal? I don't really do that. Well, yeah, because when you cut them off, you didn't think it was a big deal.
It's all parochial. It really is just all about it is really all about ourselves.
It is how we're seeing. If you feel awful inside, you project that out onto the world.
No question.
So, and we master what we practice. Then the other really important lesson I teach is this. It's just like this cup. Whatever we put in this cup, it's going to be in that cup. Sounds so. What if I just put marbles in? Well, then I'd have marbles in there. Whatever I put in it is what I'm going to have. I usually use a bucket to talk about that. So whatever I put in my bucket's going to be in there. The same is true with our mind. If you fill your mind with anger, that's what's in your mind. That's what you're going to be. If you want to see everybody as terrible and wrong and focus all your energy on that sewage system, if that's what you want to do, go do that.
Long before social media in the 90s, I really I found the works of Jim Rohn, the business philosopher. I think he was the mentor to Anthony Robbins. So he was doing the motivational self-development stuff kind of before it was cool. But he had a great phrase, and it was guard the gateway to your mind. Because if you don't pull anything out of this book you're reading, remember this: guard the gateway to your mind. It's as important as what you ingest into your stomach. It's and that always kind of stuck with me. Like garbage in, garbage out. I mean, there's a lot to that. And I think it was easier to guard the gateway to your mind before the internet age. Would you not agree?
Yeah, because you probably weren't as bombarded with different things. And so people can get, but when you're not when you're not secure with your own beliefs, you're trying to convince other people to believe what you believe. Like if you're really, I feel this on a personal level. I feel very secure with my beliefs. So I'm really comfortable if someone comes to me and has different beliefs, because I do buy into what I believe. A devoutly spiritual person. I consider myself Zen Buddhist. My wife and daughter and I would consider ourselves practicing Zen Buddhist. I'm devout in our spiritual connection. I'm completely open when people have different perceptions. Like I'm not saying I have the right path. I just believe in a divine being that if I got it wrong is going to go, you know what, you really worked hard and tried your best. I'm going to go with that. I can overlook that. And I'm comfortable with my belief system. I'm happy if somebody has a different one. And because I'm not trying to convince anybody, I'm not trying to convert anybody, convince anybody to believe what I believe, and I'm also not going to be converted or convinced unless what you say truly resonates with me.
Right. One of Rohn's other tenets was to think about and develop your own personal philosophy, and I think that you're really in tune with yours. Am I right?
I am. I live my philosophy. I live it. It's because I don't. It's not just it's not a book. It's a way of life. Like I developed something called yield theory, and yes, it is a way to help.
Let's do that. Yeah, I want to talk about the book next. So before we can get into the book, why were you compelled to write it? Was there really a moment, or was it a kind of accumulation of things that happened that?
Yeah, I write a lot. I've wanted to write it for years.
Okay.
I've really trying to articulate it in the best possible way, in the most efficient way.
Okay.
And so it takes a while to get your theory to that point. And I've been practicing it for 20 years, but it was kind of like, all right, now's the right time to say it. Pennsylvania has recently adopted, the Department of Corrections has adopted yield theory. So we're training.
How about that?
Yeah, we're training
Congratulations.
10,000. Thank you. 12,000 direct staff are going to be trained in yield theory.
Amazing.
So it's something I believe in wholeheartedly.
Okay.
And again, I demonstrate, like I started consulting in a new prison yesterday. Day one, when I walk in, there's somebody's covered up and an inmate's covered up. And I just walk right in like, this is what I do. Like this, my job is to do this. So I love when people see it because they're like, this is in action. I'm not some guy who's sitting out writing going, this is how the world should be. Or people have opinions about prison and never have been in prison.
Right.
Like, I'm there.
Most of us probably.
Yeah. And I'm there and I do it. And I've always emphasized clinical experience in anything I did, because when I taught as a professor, I didn't have to stand behind a podium and put up a PowerPoint. Like I'd say, let's talk about this. This is life. Like if you want to know what confirmation bias is, let's talk about how you have confirmation bias.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about this book, and I want to do it if it's okay with you, like basically chapter by chapter, because it's not convoluted at all. It's very, very practically written, by the way.
Thank you.
Before we do that, you mentioned, am I hearing you correctly that as a teacher, you want to go to the student?
Yes.
Go to the people.
Yes.
I had Dr. Jim Withers on, who is America's homeless doctor. He started a program in Pittsburgh to take, in early 90s, to take medical care to the Pittsburgh homeless.
Okay.
Where it has never been done before, because he'd been personally touched by the lack of care that was in the medical profession for the homeless, and he started a whole movement. But his thing was, I'm also a teacher. I love to teach. I'm going to think about it. I want to take the care to the homeless in their environment.
Yes.
Go to them, and also bring my students to teach them there.
Yes.
And I think that same mentality, that same philosophy is kind of what you're doing. Is that right?
It's exactly it. So
Okay.
So yield theory is about meeting people where they are.
Okay.
It's about getting around their fight or flight response.
It's a good intro, huh?
It's beautiful.
We transitioned very well, huh?
But I loved it. You set me up. But it's meeting people where they are. It's getting around their fight or flight response and speaking in ways that can be heard.
Okay.
It's when I say meet people where they are, it's funny because our egos love to rush in and say, well, I know it. I love that. That's what I already know about that. We love to say we understand it here, but do we actually meet people where they are? So I tell the story of a man who's standing on top of a mountain, and he's like, hey, people are lost at the bottom of the mountain. He's like, you should be up here with me. Should have gone the way I went, and just yells at them. They can't even hear him because he's on top of the mountain. So we might think, well, that guy's a fool on the mountaintop.
Right.
But how often are we like that? Anytime you say to someone, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done this. You should have done this. You're being on top of the mountain because they didn't do that.
Right.
That's cartoon world. Real world is they didn't do that. So what I do is I deal in the real world. I say, instead of talking about how people should be, How are they? Let me go meet them there. So if a guy comes into my anger management group, hates me, thinks it's stupid, thinks everything about it is stupid, I don't go, I'm Dr. Conte, what are you talking about is stupid? I go, yeah, maybe it is stupid. Maybe this is a dumb waste of your time. Like, let me meet you where you are. If that's what you're thinking, why am I saying that your way of thinking isn't valid?
Got it.
So it really is about, and I also developed this by going into people's homes. So I did a lot of in-home therapy at the beginning of my career.
Okay.
So I'm going in and working with people's homes I had worked with people who were homeless. Some people were homeless. Some people were in homes that were as destitute as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with people who were extraordinarily wealthy. Mm-hmm. And I saw, as I went there, like, that was the beginning of me talking about two kinds of people. Like, no matter where it was, there was a human condition. Mm-hmm. These emotions are human. It doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world, no money in the world. You're dealing with human emotions.
Got it. Well, you started the book off basically saying compassion is the cornerstone of understanding. What do you mean by that?
So it's that concept of the box, on your side of the box. Like, if I really want to, I believe if I have the compassion to want to see what you're seeing on your side of the box, I'm going to have a much better chance to understand it. Okay. If I keep believing I know what's on your side, that's just me seeing it through my own eyes. I'm not actually listening.
So you got to care enough. You really got to care enough.
You do have to care enough. You have to be humble and curious. Like, if there's a box between us, I need to be curious of what's on your side of the box.
Okay.
If I'm not curious, then I'm not gonna really ever know.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that we'll ever fully understand each other, because that's silly too. People say, sometimes when people are hurt, they say, you don't understand what I'm going through. And I go, you're right. I know my sense of anger. I know my sense of sadness. I know my sense of fear. And I know my life events that you don't know about. Mm-hmm. But I don't know yours. Right. I don't know what you're doing right. I'm with you. I'll listen. Teach me. But ultimately, we do go through life experiencing that inner world that we can't fully describe to others.
Okay. And empathy and sympathy, two different words naturally. Empathy is probably more toward what you're referring to naturally, because I think you can be sympathetic, but
sympathy is feeling bad for someone. Empathy is feeling with that person.
Got it.
So the key piece to yield theory is this: I believe that if I lived every day as another person, not just walked a mile in their shoes, mm-hmm. but if I had their cognitive functioning, their affective range, their ability to experience emotions, and their life experiences, I believe I would have done every single thing they did. Now think about this. I specialize in working with people convicted of violent crimes. I work with people who do the most horrific things to others, and yet I still believe this.
That's humility.
But here's what it's saying. I'm not you. How can I say I had a difficult life and I didn't do that, but you didn't have that person's life.
Right. That unique life.
I worked with a woman who was older, and she reflected on her childhood. She had gone through these horrific experiences. Mm-hmm. She was a twin. Her twin sister this father was physically, mentally, sexually abusive to this woman I worked with. Mm-hmm. Her twin, never experienced any of that.
Wow.
People could look at them. They grew up in the same house. Wow. They had the same thing. They had vastly different pictures of their father because of what their experiences were. And the two of them would look back and say, no, we're talking about describing a different human being.
How about that?
I've seen so many of these experiences that it's helped contribute to that humility to recognize we never fully know. I care. I'm genuinely interested. I'm curious. Teach me about your way of life. But I also recognize, there'll be parts that I don't understand.
Okay.
When people say, you don't understand what it's like, you'll never know. I go, yeah, you're right. When I was young, my ego, I'd be like, I understand. Now I'm like, you're right. I don't know. I have no idea. Teach me. And if you don't want to teach me, cool. But I'm still interested in you.
Okay, so the three tenets of yield theory, or what comprises yield theory, you have it as listen, validate, and explore.
Yeah. So I don't think it's rocket science, and I don't try to pretend like it is. At the same time, here's how I did this. We're easy to be skeptical of others. Mm-hmm. Think of those people out there who listen and they have strong beliefs about something. If someone disagrees with their beliefs, they will be skeptical all day. Oh, what about this? What about that? It's easy to be skeptical of others, but can you be skeptical of yourself, of your own ego? And so this is what I did. When I first started, as I was developing this, I looked and I said, what do I really do? I sit in a chair and talk to people. Like, if people get better and tell other people, that's on them. If they don't get better, that's on them. I sit in a chair. What do? I do 3 things. That's where I was really skeptical, saying, what do I do?
Okay.
I listen, I validate, and then I explore options. That's really the actions that I do. Now, there are 7 fundamental components
Right.
of how I do it, but that's the essence of what I do. I'm listening, I'm validating. Validating really means acknowledging, let's say, your side of the box. I'm acknowledging you're experiencing. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it was right or wrong, good or bad. I'm saying, wow, my goodness, that impacted you a lot. Like, validation is acknowledging how someone feels.
Which oftentimes is the crux of the problem, right? I mean, they people feel invalidated, like no one really understands. No one cares enough sometimes to understand or even hear what I'm going through.
Right. So really simply, like if this represents our emotional system in our brain, and if I had another cup that was for our frontal cortex, our higher level thinking, if this is my emotions, if this is filled up, then I can't be ready to take in anything here. So I need to drain this limbic system before I can get to the other one. So listen, validate, explore options. So I was speaking a couple of years ago, and this woman came up to me. I was talking about 500 mental health specialists.
Okay.
And a woman came up to me. I was super condescending. And she looked at me and she goes, "That's your big theory, 3 things." And I said, "Yeah, if you think about it, though, all Bruce Lee ever did was move, block, and hit, and he did pretty well for himself." So, yeah, it's not complex, but
touche.
Yeah, not complex, but it is something you have to practice. And here's what I find. I find, especially with intelligent people, they're quick to say, "I already know that. I already do that," and then they don't do it. Mm-hmm. Because our ego tucks it away and goes, "I already do that." Mm-hmm. But the reality is we have to reassess how we're listening, validating, and exploring options with people every interaction.
Right.
Every interaction.
Right. I totally agree. And what you just said is true. Oftentimes we do know the correct route to take.
Right.
But if we don't think about cognitively doing that, and sometimes just slowing ourselves down, would you not agree?
Right.
To get in that state to do that.
Right.
It's useless to know it if you don't practice.
Exactly. But that's why ego is so powerful, because ego will tell. So I'll get people who will be really defensive at I'll go into organizations and I'll meet people who are open, excited, and ready to go. That's the vast majority of people. Then there's people who are, this is all stupid. Then whatever they're coming into it preset with. Some people say, well, this is just basic common sense. Great, it is. I worked so hard to make this so simple for you that now it's common sense. Uh-huh. I love that. Uh-huh. Like, I know you meant it as an undercut, but the truth is, I love that. I love it because it's not supposed to be complex.
Right.
When you look at Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, this isn't like really complex concepts. It's about balance. It's about understanding very directly. The path isn't complex, but it takes effort.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's a good line.
Simple.
It's a good line. It's a good line. When you say explore, though, the third aspect of what you do, is that explore options for the
Yeah, so it's exploring options is this. Everything that ever happened in your life, my life, is gone. We can't get it back.
Right.
No chance for us to get back even 1 second. The future is hypothetical.
We still try to live in the past.
We do.
It's a human condition.
We do. That's the cartoon world. It should still be like this. It should still be. No, it's not. That's the reality is here. The past is gone. We can't get it back. Now, the future is hypothetical. That doesn't happen yet. It's an illusion. The only reality is the present moment.
Right.
So now, exploring options, here's what I do.
Which is Buddhism. That's the essence of Buddhism.
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is. I'm exploring options. Where do we go from this moment? There is a great concept. I got to interview Reed Wiseman, one of the fewer than 200 astronauts who walked in space. Phenomenal human being. One of the things astronauts are trained to do is work the problem. So whatever the problem is, you can't be in space going, "I feel really bad that this thing just came undone right now. I want to talk about how bad I feel that someone messed up this screw to come loose." No, you go, "What do I do? I'm in space. I either fix this. This is my problem. I don't have time to talk about my emotions about it. I just work the problem." And really, we can do that in life. Let's work the problem. Wherever you are, whatever happened, let's go from this moment forward. So I often tell people, because
that's
I try
good advice.
Well,
that is good advice.
It's powerful advice for all of us.
No question.
I can't get that past back. So what do I do with what I have done? We spend far too much energy, I think, emotional energy, on what should have happened.
Right.
You can't. It doesn't matter how great of a solution. Come up with the best solution in the world. It didn't happen. You got to work with what did happen, where you are in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, I really focus, we talk about compassion. There's so much more to it than what I just already described. I talk about in the book, but I really don't want people to live in shame, because when you live in shame, you act out of shame. So you start to hurt others when you're feeling shame. So I look at people and say, I don't care whatever you did in life. I care about what you do from this moment forward.
Okay.
Because I can't change what you did in life.
Right.
I might not like it, but why am I going to sit and belittle you about it because you can't go change it either?
Okay.
We got to work on what you can do from this moment forward.
Okay. Do you believe that everyone can change?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm passionate about what I do. I've been doing this 21 years. I'm this passionate because I do believe people can. Is it likely that everybody's going to change? That's dependent on their own process, their own path.
Okay.
There are certainly people, like I said, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So if we have somebody who's extraordinarily violent and has been violent with everyone they're around, and maybe they're physically dominated enough to be that violent, and then you go put them in let's say they're incarcerated in a restricted housing unit, and you say, well, that's messed up. Psychologically, that's messed up.
Right.
I agree with you.
Right.
What's your next option? Because this is what a lot of people don't understand when they talk about the prison system from the outside. They're like, well, just do something. No, that's not the argument. The argument, what are you going to do? Are you going to physically unlock that door, put him with someone else when you know his full intention is to hurt that other person? So which human life are you saying, I don't care about? I'm going to watch him hurt this person.
Right.
Okay, so let's get real. We can't do that. So now the option might be you're here in this door until things change. Are you likely to change? Maybe if we put the right stuff in front of you, you might be. That's why I'm so passionate about bringing yield theory, because maybe if you start to learn about yourself, maybe you'll be like, yeah, I do want to change something. Sometimes we have to bring some information that people never knew.
Got it. Yeah, I get it. You talk about acceptance. Again, as we kind of talked about, for meeting others where they are. Going to the prisons is obviously a big example of that, right?
Right, exactly. So acceptance is two things. One, I'm definitely meeting people where they are. I'm accepting the reality of where people are emotionally. So whether I'm going physically, I could talk on the phone to somebody, I'm still meeting where they are emotionally.
Got it.
I'm not thinking you shouldn't be thinking that. You shouldn't be feeling that. I go, okay, that's what you're thinking. That's what you're feeling.
So it's reality. You're dealing with reality.
Exactly. Now, this sounds so logical to you and to me right here in this moment. Hopefully listeners, viewers are saying, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But do you do it? As soon as you get into the next, you might think about it. You might shut this, be done with this, move on to the next thing. The first thing someone says to you, well, they shouldn't have said that. They did. They did say that. So how much time are you going to talk? Well, I watched this on the news. That shouldn't have happened. It did happen. So are you dealing with what should have happened or what did happen? And I just deal with what did happen. I just get there faster. I don't spend time on what should have happened, what shouldn't have happened. I just go, okay, here's where we are.
Okay. You know what I find interesting? You say that, and again, it kind of goes back to the whole political thing, but a guy could go, well, this person shouldn't have done that, or they shouldn't have had this policy. And we often get so emotionally wrapped up in things that happen like that, but we are unable, because we're incapable of making a change on that matter at all. Not reversing what's happened, but even stopping that from happening again. We're not in control of that. Yeah, we internalize it, and it kind of puts us in a negative state. We all do it. That's so destructive.
It is.
If you break it down, isn't it?
It is. It's very destructive because we're trying to deal in a realm that's just not real. We're trying to deal in what I might call the cartoon world.
Yeah.
That's you're king of your cartoon world. You're queen of your cartoon world. That's wonderful. Guess what? The world's not paying attention to it. They all have their cartoon worlds.
Yeah.
So you got to learn how to deal with reality. The more you can align your expectations with reality, the more prepared you are for it. That's really what it comes down to. And again, people will hear that and go, well, then I won't expect anything from anyone anymore. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Expect reality. It doesn't mean you can't be thrown off. It doesn't mean you won't feel emotions.
Right.
Anger can be good. Anger can be channeled in a really healthy way. Maybe you get angry to get away from a toxic relationship. Maybe you get angry to break free from a job that's not healthy for you. Anger can be good. It's not wrong and bad. That's one of the things that's funny when people don't watch anything I say, and they'll maybe comment without watching a video. They'll be like, so I guess you're saying no one should ever get angry again. Like, when on planet Earth have I ever said that?
Right.
But again, I wouldn't jump into a discussion and be like, oh, let me defend. No, you didn't even watch the video. So
right. Well, they're misinformed.
Right.
They're uninformed.
They're
uninformed.
Uninformed. Yeah, right. But it's okay. But I expect that there are going to be people when you put yourself out there. There will be people. I can make a YouTube video. I'm busy this week. I might try to do one this week. I'll do a YouTube video. By the time I press publish, there will be likes and no likes within 10 seconds. Within 10 seconds.
That's the society we're living in.
There are people who actually subscribe just to press don't like. Oh, a new video's out. Don't like it. So somebody somewhere just doesn't like me for whatever reason. I had a guy one time, he emailed me, he was like, I think you're a joke. Everything you do is a joke. So I wrote back and I said, my man, you must really be struggling, because he definitely had a male name. It was like Johnson. But I said, man, you must really be struggling. I've never felt so entitled to be able to reach out to somebody whose work I didn't like and just tell them. So I can't even fathom. Like, if I watched a video, this is just me. I might be different. But if I watch a video and I don't like it, I just turn it off.
Of course.
I don't stop to be like, let me tell you what you should have done differently. Or if I like the video, I don't stop to go, I liked it, except for this part right here. I would have said it this way. I'm like, it's comical.
So you hit on something. So why do so many humans feel they compelled that they must respond to everything they indulge?
They believe, they see themselves as so center focused that this person needs my opinion. This person needs me to contribute to this conversation.
Wow.
The world needs me to say this negative thing I have. And it's silly, but my point about all this stuff is we get wrapped up in this and we don't accept reality. When we accept reality, when we can, it's very freeing.
Mm-hmm. It's
very freeing to go, hey, I'm going to work with what I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I call being efficient. So if somebody goes to throw a punch, when the fist is here, I'm not hit. I can be right here. When the fist is right here, I can be right here. When it's right here, I can be right here. But if it's going to be here, I've got to move. And this is all the farther I need to move to be out of the way. So I boxed and kickboxed for a large part of my life. And when a punch is coming, as my dad always said, the best place to be when a punch comes is not there. It doesn't mean that I need to be way over here. It just means when it's here, I need to be here. That's it. And when you think about that, no exaggerated response.
Right.
And that's really what I've learned with life. Like, I'm efficient in my self-talk. I'm efficient in my language with others. I say
efficiency.
It's efficiency. It's accuracy, balance, and efficiency. And when you're accurate and balanced and efficient, what really happened? Someone said something today I didn't agree with. Okay, cool. That's really not the end of the world.
Right.
When you reframe it like that, people are doing things and saying things that I don't agree with. Okay. That's not that big of a deal. Like, that's really what happened. But no, they shouldn't have said it.
It really isn't a deal at all, if you think about it, right? Not even a big deal. It's not even, if you choose to operate your life that way.
Well, one of the first things, if someone comes to see me and they'll tell me, and maybe they're fired up, and well, they did this, this, and this, so somebody responded to you in a way that you didn't want. Well, yeah. So someone responded in a way you didn't want, and you're really upset about it. Well, yeah, but it's not like that. It's because they should have. So you're locked in this cartoon world. They should have what? That
word, huh? That is a reoccurring word, should have.
Over and over again. Think about it. It's powerful. Like, one of the homework assignments I'll give people when I do seminars is watch your shoulds, even for a night. And people come back the next day like, oh my gosh, I have so many shoulds, I didn't realize it. We do.
Wow. You move on to authenticity, and you say operating from essence. Explain that to me.
So we kind of talked about this a little earlier. Let's go back to our iceberg.
Okay.
If this is most of what's underwater, that part that's above water, that's consciousness.
Right.
The part that's underwater, unconscious. Above water, consciousness. The center of our consciousness, ego. The center of who we are, that's essence.
Okay.
So we're so much more that, and our essence is our unique, alive part of us that is curious, wants to learn, wants to grow. It's always seeking to grow. When you ask people, do you still have more to learn? People go, oh yeah, I have more to learn. Great. So the next time anything bothers you, go, maybe they're seeing something you're not seeing. Maybe there's a side of the box I'm not seeing. That makes it changes.
Do you think that we are not self-aware enough?
I believe that's
the journey.
I think that's our quest, is to continually be more aware. So something called depth psychology. Carl Jung did something that it's under the umbrella of depth psychology, or what's called analytical psychology, and it is essentially about making this line lower. So we're expanding. Some people say raising consciousness. It's expanding consciousness so that we can eventually have this essence be our conscious nature.
Okay. I think there's a lot of humans running around that just are not, me maybe included, that just do not know ourselves well enough. We talk about in here, getting someone to admit that they don't know everything or that they have more to learn. That's humbling, and I'm glad to hear that. But the fact that you had to tell them or get them to the point to mention that when they should already have accepted that, and that could be guiding how they maneuver through life, right?
But they should have accepted. They shouldn't have accepted.
I said
it does. It comes back. That's why Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching. But in Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching, the master teaches people to not know.
Okay.
That's really what that's about. Is to get through the ego, and our ego says you're right. What you think and feel and believe is right.
Got it. And then you move on to compassion, overcoming anger. That's it's a broad one.
Yeah, and I say, quote the Buddha says, anger will never be overcome with anger, but by love alone. And he's right. I think he's right. Like with that, it just seems to resonate with me that answer. Like anger on top of anger doesn't make right. When you have a bunch of people who are really angry because these people don't accept. Yeah,
I think of war.
Think of the mentality of even if somebody is an accepting person, I embrace accepting others. These people don't embrace accepting others. Well, I don't accept them. So you don't really embrace others. You don't really accept diversity. You just accept people who also agree with you. So what I'm trying to say is let's accept everyone, including, and here's how I lead by example. If somebody comes by and says, yield theory is a bunch of crap, okay, great. Maybe it is. I'm going to give you my best. I'm going to give the world my best. Maybe you see it as that. Maybe it is.
Right.
Maybe it's possible that you're angry and you have your own feelings around it and you're just saying something toward me. It's also possible that maybe I'm completely wrong. And if I am, then when I learn something new, I'll go in a different direction. Right now, this fits for me. It fits for the people I work with. And I'm cool if somebody doesn't like it.
And then you move on to non-attachment, letting go of ego.
Yeah, so non-attachment's one of them, probably this is what separates people from understanding yield theory from actually practicing it.
Okay.
Basically what I just said, let's say if I say this, if this is my information and I'm hold on to it, if you disagree with what I believe, I get mad. How dare you disagree with me? But if I can take my thoughts, and remember, I'm still learning, I set them down over here. If you disagree with my thoughts, I go, okay, you didn't disagree with the essence of who I am. You don't believe something I believe. You don't think something I think. Maybe if I'm still learning, maybe they'll learn something new that'll change my perspective.
Right.
But you're not attacking my essence. You're just saying you don't agree with something. So as long as I'm attached to my beliefs, we're going to be really upset. When I'm not attached, and I'm not my thoughts. We're not our thoughts. We all are growing. We've all had moments.
Humans struggle with that. We
struggle with it. We definitely struggle with it, but we're not our thoughts. We master what we practice. So if we practice being non-attached, you eventually become much more effective at it. Like I do this really well with, my wife always says that I'm really effective with feedback. I've always been, my parents gave me direct feedback growing up, which I really appreciated. I love that. My people give me feedback all the time. My wife says I have a face where people just don't mind telling me stuff that like one time we went to a wedding and I walked in, we were just married just 20 years ago, and I think I look like what I look like, and the guy goes, why didn't you shave? And she was laughing. She goes, what were you going to do? Go shave on the spot right there? Like you can't change it. So why did somebody feel the necessary to comment about what you did? It's just funny. But I always felt like when I get feedback, I just acknowledge it. Like that's somebody else's perspective.
Right. Well, I think that you have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have bought into the idea and the concept that you're always looking for the other side of the box, or acknowledging if you can't get there, that there is another side of the box.
Exactly. That's it. I really do believe that. I believe that profoundly. That's how I taught my daughter about religion. So that when she was young, she was 5 years old, she brought home a pamphlet someone gave her on religion, and the pamphlet said, this is the truth. So she said, Daddy, this is the truth, right? It says this is the truth. So I took her up to her playroom and I put her, she was 5 years old, this little time, so I put a big box on the floor in front of her, and I had her lie on her ground, on her stomach, and close her eyes. And I put 4 different objects around the box.
Okay.
And then what I did is, when she opened her eyes, she saw like a My Little Pony. So I said, what do you see? She said, My Little Pony. I said, is it true there's a My Little Pony there? Yes, that's truth, right? Okay, cool. Is it true there's a My Little Pony on every side? She said, yes. So I scooted her so she could see 2 sides. On this side, I had a little book set up. So she goes, oh, it's a book. I said, that's okay. Is it still true that there's a pony on this side? Yes, that's truth. To someone who sees only that side, that is truth. Now, is there a pony in a book on the other 2 sides? 5 years old. She said, now, Daddy, I don't know. I said, that's it. When you can listen to people with the humility to understand that just because you see something doesn't mean that tells the whole story. The people who wrote that pamphlet and follow that path, they see that side that's beautiful and wonderful. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the entire side of the whole box, or that there even is a box. And so then I quoted the opening lines of the Tao Te Ching, which is, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. I have a tattoo, Vide Totem Deum, on my arm, which is see the whole God. That God is, this divine is bigger than anything we can name or put in a box or anthropomorphize or anything else. That it's greater than that. Heinrich Zimmer once said, your highest God is your highest obstruction to God. So the thing, your final vision, this is what God is, well, God's bigger than that.
Right.
Like you can't even comprehend it.
Right.
At least this is just
and you're
side of
so
the
you're
box that
limiting
I see.
yourself. You're limiting yourself.
Yeah. But anyway, that's some of the concept about that. So yeah, I'm constantly seeking in non-attachment to say, I don't know what's on the other side of the box. With acceptance, I want to accept where you are on that side of the box. With compassion, I'm interested. I want to learn about that side. And mindfulness is probably going to get into mindfulness.
Yeah.
Next. And
We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Well, go ahead.
No, I'm just kind of, because the book reads very logical to me. It's a great read.
Thank you.
It's a great read. And again, Walking Through Anger, Dr. Conte. It's Amazon. It's everywhere, right?
Yeah, Barnes and Noble, wherever.
It's everywhere. And thank you for this copy, by the way.
Definitely.
Matched up with my other version. You move on to conscious education, and you give an example, Plato's cave and the expansion of understanding. So I don't know Plato humbly as well as I probably should, but help me with that.
Okay, so Plato's cave was this. Plato said, he was a philosopher, and he said, what if you took people and you imprisoned them from the time they were infants? And so now, this is just a thought experiment. You take them in this cave, and you fashion them in a way that when they grow up their whole life, they're chained to face the back wall of the cave. So on the outside of the cave, there would be a fire burning, so that when people walked by, it would cast shadows on the walls in front of the prisoners. So the prisoners would grow up their entire lives hearing voices, but seeing these shadows. They would come to know these shadows as reality. So what he said was, and this is book 26 of the Republic, he said, what if you took one of those prisoners one day and you set them free? And they came out and they saw all these weird things talking instead of their shadows. Where do you think they're going to want to go? Right back in that cave. And we might say, well, why would someone imprison themselves in a cave when there's this beautiful world out here? Sure, it might be scary at first to see that what you thought was wrong, but then there's a whole beautiful world out there. You're going to keep yourself in this cave? That's so silly. That's you and that's me. Every time you're attached to what you believe, this is the way the world is. We live in a galaxy with almost 200 billion stars. 3 years ago now, Hubble taught us that there are at least 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions. There's untold life out there. There's so much life throughout the universe. It's so elementary, rudimentary, silly for us to think that we're the center of the universe.
It's the height of human arrogance.
It's beyond silly. So there's so much life out there. There's so much. And so when we start to think, like physics, this is an exciting time for astronomy because
Absolutely.
Physics will say we have laws of physics. And then all of a sudden we're finding things in astronomy. We're going, this can't be. Well, it is. So now,
quantum mechanics, my friend.
Right. Is it possible we were wrong? Is it possible we don't have all the answers? So it's humbling to see this.
Sure.
So when it comes to conscious education, it's this. We're constantly learning. Like my job is to help bring awareness to someone. Sometimes people don't understand as simple as this. The more attached you are to what you believe, the angrier you're going to be when others disagree. Now, the next time you're out and about and you start to get really angry, you go, wait, do I need things to be, do I really need this person to get out of my way on the road right now, or do I just want it? Am I okay right? Yeah, I'm okay. Now, all of a sudden, you're able to handle the situation more effectively. Different perspective. And conscious education is about helping people basically get out of the cave. I start by saying, I'm in the cave too. We're all in the cave.
Right.
It's not a matter of, we live in a world where we have a lot of people who are like, I'm the expert. You all need to do this, this, and this. No, my philosophy is we're in this together. I'm in this together. If I've come across information before you, I'm happy to share it with you.
Right.
I'm also very humble, grateful when you share the information with me that I haven't come across yet. So instead of walking around saying, you should have known this already. No, you didn't. And I got to come across it first. So I'm going to share it with you.
Got it.
And the same thing, I'd like you to be patient with me, if it's possible, when you have information that I don't have. Like if I didn't know that, I apologize. I didn't know what you wanted me to know.
Right.
But I'm grateful and happy to learn it.
Right.
So conscious education is about expanding awareness.
Move on to creativity, beyond the one-size-fits-all problem solving.
So creativity is about finding unique ways to help things make sense for people. There was a young monk, and he went to his master, and he said, hey, everybody here is at this monastery is picking on me.
Okay.
Monk just sat there in silence. The young monk said, I don't think you heard me. All these monks are picking on me. I thought they were supposed to be holy. The master sits there in silence. Young monk says, oh, I see how it is. You're taking their side now. You're siding with them even though they're talking smack on me. And the monk's sitting there in silence. The master's sitting there in silence. He goes, I can't believe you're like this. He was like, he gets fired up. So finally the master looks at him. He goes, give me your legs. The monk said, what? He said, cut off your legs and give them to me. He said, what are you talking about? I'm telling you these people are picking on me. The master says, cut off your legs and give them to me now. The monk says, no, no. Master says, why is it that you defend your body so fiercely but give away your mind so easily?
Huh.
We spend so much time defending our body, but we give away our mind so easily. Think about it. If someone disagrees with you, there are families. I do a show called Emotional Management, a radio show. Families will hate each other because they have different political views within the family. Mm-hmm. Really? Like think about the anger you have toward another human being because they see things differently from you. Mm-hmm. And you're angry with them. You hate them. Oh my goodness. Well, what are we doing to ourselves? We're giving away our power. We're giving away our mind left and right. Like if someone can make you instantly angry, they own control over you.
No question.
That's a fact.
No question about it.
And I do this a lot in the prison system. I'll say I do this technique with puppets. I'm like if I say to this bottle, hey, you're terrible, and he's like, oh, he's upset. Well, he's mad because I'm in control. Oh, I'm just kidding. You're awesome. Yay, I'm all happy. Well, you don't want to be the puppet, but think about this. Anytime you've ever given your power away or you've let somebody get you angry fast, you are their puppet. Mm. They are in control of you.
Words are powerful. Mm-hmm. Words are powerful, but we give them power.
We do.
Especially on the receiving end.
We give them, we create the power for them. Mm-hmm. Think about that. Like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. Someone called him yellow, or what was it, a coward or something like that. Mm-hmm. He would do whatever they said because he's like, you're not going to do this. Well, he gave them the word power. He gave it meaning. Right. If it doesn't have meaning, it doesn't do anything.
Right. That's exactly right. Now we're on the mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
That's a pretty misused word,
it is.
Doctor. I mean, it's in today's vernacular.
Because it's a buzzword. So people want to say, oh, be mindful, be mindful. Here's what it means. Honestly, is what it comes down to. Are you aware of how you come across to others? You see yourself through your own eyes right now. Mm-hmm. You might physically see, I might physically see my arms right now, or the tip of my hat, or this part of my body. For the same for you, but I see you, you see me. Right. To be mindful is be aware not only how your environment is impacting you, but what you're contributing to the environment.
Okay.
To be mindful means to be aware that when your body feels a certain way, your mind will want to race to match it. But what if we were able to say, for instance, been married, this year will be our 20th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. If we were to say early in our relationship, maybe if I was hungry, we're getting into a little bit of a dispute over something, and really it was just being hungry.
Right.
At this part in our life, like if I were agitated, my wife would be like, here, just eat this, and this, and then we'll talk. And then I eat it, and what do you want to talk to me about? Nothing. But that was really good. What if we could be more mindful to recognize I'm not mad at you when I'm hungry. I'm just hungry.
Right.
Like we teach our daughter to say, if you feel agitated, that's human. It's okay to say, I feel really agitated, rather than make up a story. Right. I'm agitated because of you. You wanted me to come to dinner right now, so that's making me mad. No, You feel agitated.
Yeah, we're looking
So
for a cause. We search for a cause.
to confirm why we're feeling the way we are. It's one of the most
Interesting.
freeing things in the world to become mindful. The other thing is this. I just mentioned earlier, people see our actions, not our intentions. We judge ourselves by our intentions. We judge others by their actions. But being mindful means, let me be aware of my impact on you right now. Let me be mindful of my energy. Like, people say, well, I don't want to be around this person. They're so negative. What are you contributing to that conversation? When they're negative, do you feed into it? Everything's terrible. Yeah, I guess it is. No, everything's terrible. Sounds like you're having a tough day. That's what I'll say. If somebody comes out with negativity and they're really upset about it, it sounds like you're having a really tough day. And I'll hold a space for them to say that, but I'm not going to just jump into that. Just because you're negative doesn't mean I have to jump on and be negative.
Right.
I'm going to be in control of me.
There's not enough of that going on in the world. That's for darn sure.
No, and I think that it's easier to just acquiesce and give in. Somebody's negative, we're negative. It's like the elevator complex. I get on the elevator, it's awkward. It's people are like, oh, it's supposed to rain later. Oh, I guess it's terrible. It's just, we jumped and we gravitate toward that negativity.
We do. We definitely do. You have 5 errors in communication. What not to do.
Yeah, listen, I'm so excited for people to get out and read this book because there's a lot.
Oh, we're just
There's
skimming.
a lot to
We're
it.
just skimming the content. We're
to
just skimming it for conversational purposes.
So 5 areas of communication I broke down to say there are certain mistakes we make when we approach people, how we speak, how we listen, and what we take away. Basically, that's the overarching 3 things. So here's what they are. The first one is error of approach. In other words, when you want to talk to someone. So yield theory is all about, we have a fight or flight response in our brain. If a bear walked in the room right now, you and I, our fight or flight would go.
Fight, I'm flight.
But I'm saying, if people are watching a brain scan, bear walks in, we take that amygdala, sends adrenaline to cortisol, sends a message to our adrenal glands, put adrenaline and cortisol throughout our body.
Right.
And now we're either going to fight, flee, or freeze. That just as much neurologically, if a bear walked in this room, if we had a brain scan on and our loved one came in and said, we need to talk, our brain would do the same thing. Wait, what do we need to talk about? What is it? Just tell me. So what happens is, and we shut people down. And once someone's steeped in their emotional center, they're not ready to take it. You and I, if we do a brain scan, we're in our frontal cortex. We're having a friendly conversation, intellectual discussion. Our brain scans would show that. But if we're angry, that's emotional, right? If we're anxious, sad.
Okay.
So my job is to help get around that fight or flight response and speak in ways that can be heard. It's easy to stand on a soapbox and be like, I told them, I told him he was wrong. Great. Did that do anything? Did you teach him anything new? Or did you just have your ego say, well, I told him. So the error of approach, the first error of communication, occurs when we shut people down from the moment we interact. Things like, we need to talk. Or let me tell you why you're wrong. Because now the person's only listening to defend. Big one. Yeah. And now they're only listening to defend whatever they have to say. They're not actually listening. And what I show with the 5 errors is that we contribute to every interaction. This is where we think, oh, no, I didn't do anything. No, you did. You played a role. Anytime you've engaged in communication, you play a role. If someone comes to you to tell you about someone else and you say, I'm not even talking, I'm going to give them silent treatment, you played a role. You can't escape it. You are alive, you play a role. So if you're involved in a conversation, you play a role. The question I'd challenge people with is, what are you contributing? So error of approach is one way. Once you learn about it, you can learn to avoid it. Then we have the error of interpretation. In other words, do I actually hear what you're communicating, or do I hear what I think you're going to say? That occurs a lot.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Then we have the error of judgment, when we judge people rather than assess them.
Do we prejudge them sometimes?
Absolutely. So we judge people rather than assess them. So I say constantly, it comes back to that work the problem, it comes back to the present moment, because all of this one thing you'll see is a consistent theme in everything I teach and live by. And that is that if I know I lost my train of thought for a moment. Which one was I saying? Error of approach. Interpretation. So interpretation. So if I'm expecting to see something, that's what I'm going to see, rather than also with judgment too. I want to say so judgment versus assessment.
Right.
To assess someone comes back to the present moment. What's happening in this present
Okay.
moment? To judge someone is to go backwards in time.
Right.
You did this, this, and this, and this.
Right.
I'm not saying you're wrong or bad if you want to judge people. I'm saying it's not effective communication.
I would agree.
Judge anybody
I
you
would
want,
agree.
live however you want, do whatever you want.
Absolutely.
If you're asking me about, I'm only talking about, is it effective?
Right.
Okay, so I'd say the error of judgment occurs when we judge people rather than assess them. Then finally, there's the error of language, which occurs when we use extreme words. You always do that. You never do that. All you need is one exception, and those two things aren't true. So if I took out the trash once 20 years ago, my wife can't say, you never take out the trash. Well, that's not true. Now we're talking about
couples
this.
do this to them each other all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I teach them is fight about what you can fight this week, all week, but just fight about whatever you're fighting about. If he doesn't do the dishes today, that's what you're mad at. Be mad at that. Don't be mad at 7,000 things that happened in the past.
Got it.
So actually argue about whatever you're. So I did an article on this once. I said, don't box in between rounds. Rest in between rounds. If a fighter walked over and just started punching his trainer at the corner, he wouldn't get any rest. So fight while you're in the fight, but don't fight when you're away from it. And that means sometimes when you have a disagreement, talk to somebody about that disagreement. Don't sit off in your head and start to make it bigger and bigger. So finally, then I'd say the error of omnipotence. And the error of omnipotence occurs whenever you accept responsibility for what other people do. That the omnipotence, omni-powerful, all-powerful. We're not all-powerful. In other words, you're not responsible for what other people do.
Okay.
I believe profoundly I am responsible to give the world my best, but what people do with that is up to them. So if people change and they come back and say, you changed my life, I say, no, I was blessed to be a part of your path. You changed your life.
Right.
Because if I take credit when people change, I also have to take credit when people don't change. I'm only in control of me, and that's challenging enough. So I'm not going to take responsibility for what other people are doing. I take responsibility for my role,
Right.
but not your choices.
Friends, walking through anger. Dr. Conte. This was amazing, my friend.
Appreciate this.
This was
great.
absolutely, positively amazing. And like I said, it's a wonderful book. It flows very well. It's easy to understand, and I think it goes back to where that's your mission to make the complex easy.
It is.
But I think you're even more of a talented speaker. Your videos are tremendous.
Thank you very much.
Tremendous. I've referred them to my children. I mean, you're doing great work.
I love the work you're doing. This is an example. What you're doing with this podcast, what you've done with this space, like you've made this space a beautiful space.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, I've really enjoyed this. I mean, I took my time.
I'm going to ask you on camera. I would love for you to come back.
Yeah,
and check in with us a couple times a year.
I will come back because I love. Not only do I love this space, but I love what you're putting out into the universe. So here's something that I say that I believe is very powerful and a very important part of what I share with the world. And I say this: we are contributing to the content of the universe right now. You and I, whatever words we say. So if you get out on the road and someone cuts you off and you flip them off, you contributed.
Right.
That's why when the Buddha says anger will never be overcome with anger, but by love alone, when you flip them off, you now have more anger. Would that make it better?
Right.
It did make it better.
Right.
I felt better. Great. Temporarily. Is that your character? Is that who you are? So what I say is, let's recognize that we're creating the content of the universe. So today, whatever you say, if somebody says something you don't like on social media, if you fire back with more negativity, that's what you contributed. Oh, but I didn't mean to. Well, I don't want to be contributing negativity. It doesn't matter if you want to be a gossiper. It doesn't matter if you want to be negative. If you are, you are. So be mindful what you contribute. So that being said, you contributed this beautiful space to bring people in, let people talk about, share about their work. This is a beautiful contribution, and it's something that we connected through. You saw, I guess, work through social media, so we were able to connect that way.
Absolutely.
That's why I wouldn't villainize and vilify and say, oh, everything that's social media is
not at
bad.
all.
It's not.
Not at all.
But like you say, let's be aware what we're contributing to it, and then think of the positives of connecting. So thank you so much for having me on.
It was an absolute delight, and please come back again.
Definitely.
All right, friends. Dr. Conte. The book again is Walking Through Anger, and we are out. Much peace, right?
I say to everybody, I wish you much peace.
We'll see.
Thank you.
What do you think?
Awesome.
Was that good?
Fantastic. I love your
Thank you, man.
your
Dude,
energy, your style, everything.
You made it so easy for me.
Tips above the water, you watch me drown. You could have saved me, but you let me down. Yeah.